I'm happy to see everyone here. I hope you had a really great coffee break. And today we are going to talk about PostgreSQL and NodeJs as a core feature of Backend for Frontend. So our agenda will be, firstly, we will have a closer look at NodeJs, Next.js, and NestJS and how they are connected, because all these names are pretty similar, so we will look at it. The second will be a Backend for Frontend pattern and rendering strategies, which we have. The third will be how exactly we can use PostgreSQL in Next.js for server-side rendering optimization. And the fourth one, how we can use NestJS with PostgreSQL, when and why. So what is actually Node.js? Node.js is a JavaScript runtime which allows us to run JavaScript on the server. It's pretty good, and it has grown really massively in popularity over the years. And after we started to have a few different frameworks, a really new one, it's NestJS. NestJS is a backend framework which was inspired by Angular and was created by Camille. And Next.js, it's a React framework, which firstly started to be as just front-end framework, as Angular, as Vue, but after they did some changes, and it became as full-stack framework, and we will talk about it a bit later, how we actually can use it. So as well, I wanted to look a bit at some companies which right now use Node.js. It's a really big one. For example, Yahoo, Uber, GoDaddy. So some of them use Node.js fully, and another ones use it for some specific services. And as of 2024, approximately 40% of developers reported using Node.js, solidifying its position as leading choice for server-side development. As well, if we look at GitHub and firstly at React GitHub, we can see that 200,000 of developers already started. And if we look at Next.js, which is actually built on the top of React library, we have already more than 100,000 of stars in GitHub. So it's a pretty big number, because if we will take a look at another frameworks which we have on the market, it's, for example, Vue.js. Right now, it has only like 50,000 stars, and Angular around 100,000. So React is getting really popular as a choice for front-end, and it's easy to find developers for it. So it's why we talk about it today. And going to Backend for Frontend pattern, so it's an architectural pattern where a lightweight server acts as intermediary between the client-side application and backend services. So, of course, we should have some main backend server where we will have all this heavy data processing task which we should do. But sometimes we need something in between which will optimize the data retrieval mappings to make it easier for us to use this data on the front end. So, and we will start with a look of some rendering strategies which we have on the front-end side. Server-side rendering in old style, how it looked like. Back days, when server-side rendering became widely adopted, web applications were following multi-page application model. So in this approach, when we have opened some page, we have requested actually some HTML from the server. And when we have done this, user had just like blank screen, and on the server we have seen this all hard work. It's authentication, database connection, and finally it was some HTML generation. And after some time, we have got this index.html page, and user have seen some content. So it was actually pretty good for SEO, so for indexing of our website, but it was really a bad user experience. So if additional data was needed from another server, for example, we needed to update some data which we already have received, we should make request one again to the service. The service can communicate with another service, and we should wait some time before we will get updated data and full page re-rendered. So it was like pretty heavy, not so UX, but it was great for SEO. Going later, client-side rendering became widely popular because we started to have on the market some new frameworks like React, Vue, Angular, and some others, and they introduced it to us. So actually, right now, our user experience became a bit better because, firstly, when we opened a page, we have this browser load when we received some index.html file where we had connected some other JavaScript files. So once we received these HTML files where we had like JavaScript files which we needed like to load, our page started to load these JavaScript files, and only after this, we start to process all requests which we have in these JavaScript files. And on this step, we started to have some loading spinners, and it became much better than just having some white screen as we had before. So it's how it looked like. And these SPAs are commonly built with such frameworks as React, Vue.js, Angular. So Frontend handles all this routing and then dynamically updates the page without requiring full reload of the page. So right now, we can like update each component separately without full page reload, as we have done it in old way in server-side rendering. But what can I say? It's much worse for SEO, because right now we have all this content dynamic, and our browser can't really index it. So end renderings, which we had on the market and have right now, it's server-side rendering, which we already discussed. It's client-side rendering. It's static-side generation. So to talk about it a bit, it's like, for example, when we have some blog, we have thousands of posts, and we spent only some time during the build time to actually build all these posts, and after our client side and server time is minimal because we have all the block pre-rendered, and we just like give the user these pages. And incremental static regeneration, it's something between server-side rendering and static-side generation, because in this case, we can tell to our page that we have some content and we want to update it, for example, one time per 60 seconds. And all these 59 seconds when the user requests a page, we have some already fetch the data, and we just like show it to the user. And on this 60 seconds, we update this data, and time of giving the page to the user can be a bit increased. So it's pretty a nice combination when we want to render something like this. So how modern SSR looks like? The new SSR model is no longer about generating a full HTML page on every request. It's kind of a hybrid approach that combines elements of server-side rendering, incremental static regeneration, and static-side generation to optimize our performance and choose a rendering strategy which will work the best for us. Instead of waiting for the entire page to be rendered before sending a response, modern SSR can stream HTML to the client in stages, allowing different parts of the page to load independently. For example, when a user requests a page, application like the navigation or basic layout can be served almost immediately from a cached or pre-generated content. But at the same time, critical data like the main feed or list of posts is being rendered on the server in the background. This means the user sees a structured page immediately, while specific components fetch and render their data separately. So some parts of the page may even continue load asynchronously, updating dynamically as new content arrives. So this granular control over rendering also helps reduce the amount of JavaScript sent to the client, improve SEO by ensuring the page are fully rendered on the server before being sent to the search engines, and minimizes API water flows. So in this case, in this strategy, we can, for example, have like some 20 components on the page, and we can choose different rendering strategies for each component. So one of these components can be updated incrementally, like 1 time per 1 minute. Some of them can be fully dynamic, and some of them can be really static, and this data always will be prefetched, and our search engine can already have some info to index it and show our site during user search. Such frameworks like Next.js, as well Next.js, it's used in Vue and Remix, introduce this new way of server-side rendering, which actually combines SSR, SSG, and ISR to improve our performance and SEO. Unlike traditional SPAs, as we talked before, these frameworks can pre-render HTML on the server before sending it to the client, ensuring that pages load faster with meaningful content already in place. So this eliminates the blank screen issue and reduces the number of API calls required for interactive experience. So how exactly PostgreSQL can be used in Next.js for SSR optimization? So PostgreSQL allows us to do really smart database handling. For example, if Next.js application needs to process and analyze large video files, a NodeJs backend server using worker threads or a queue system could handle video transcoding, reducing the workload on the Next.js server. So this approach allows us to combine different backend architectures while ensuring that the front-end receives optimized responses, improves scalability, and supports integration across multiple platforms. So the first thing which we can do on Next.js is actually connect to PostgreSQL directly without doing any API calls to backend, without using any ORMs. So we can do it like pretty simple, just by connecting to it via Next.js. Because Next.js works in a way that we can use it as just front-end, but when we start to write some backend, during build time, Next.js builds our application as client and as server. So it gives us this ability. The second thing that we can query this actually PostgreSQL directly, and we can use some specific functions which Next.js allows us to use. So one of these functions called get server-side props in Next.js that allows us to fetch data and render the content of a page at request time. So this actually is an example of server-side rendering in Next.js, how we can do it. Each time when this page will be opened, this data will be refetched again. The third thing is incremental static regeneration, and we can use it with a special function which called getStaticProps. This function allows us to fetch data at build time and generate a static HTML page with that data. So when we write a blog, we can actually use this function to smartly get the data for it. So it gives to us really a lot of advantages. For example, update static content without rebuilding the entire site. So if we changed some specific post, we can update this specific post without rebuilding the whole block. We can reduce server load by serving pre-rendered static pages for most requests. We can ensure some proper cache control headers, which are automatically added to pages by Next.js, so it's already smartly handled. And handle large amounts of content pages without long next build times. This is how it looks like. So we actually have some lib file. It will be built in the server of Next.js, and pages articles.js, it's a file which will be on the client side. And during the build time, Next.js will take this get static props, and this function will be executed on the server of Next.js, not on the client. And we can see an example of incremental static regeneration. And revalidate means that we will refetch this data each 30 seconds. So when user will open this page, we will already have some data shown to the user, and we won't have any loading spinners. So, when this time will be achieved, like this 30 seconds, we will refetch this data. This data will be just changed without actually adding these loading spinners. So it will be just replaced. And it's like really a big problem which we were facing on the front-end side for years. And Next.js introduced it in the last few versions. So benefits of server-side rendering in Next.js. So of course, it's improved performance because we can deliver pre-rendered HTML, and server-side rendering reduces the initial load time on the client side. So when user opens a page, we have a pre-cached page which user already sees. It's enhanced SEO, because search engines can easily crawl and index the initial server-rendered content. It's reduced client-side load, and some fetching methods which Next.js allows us to use. So it's like, as we discussed, get static props, it's get server-side props, and some get initial props. So I'm just trying to understand why it's called SSR when it seems to work differently from traditional SSR. So it's called SSR because anyway, the app is effectively being rendered on the server. And the fact that front-end routing takes over after the initial render doesn't change that the initial page load was generated on the server. But Next.js allows us to build hybrid apps. So some pages can use SSR, others can be fully static, and some can be client rendered with dynamic data fetching. So if we are going to back to backend framework, it's NestJS. As I said, it was inspired by Angular and written by Camille, really geek programmer. So when and why we should use it? Even if Next.js allows us to write backend on its side, it doesn't mean that we should write everything in Next.js and be happy, you know. As I said earlier, and as I started earlier, we talked about backend for front-end concept, and it's important to note that this concept we should use in Next.js, and backend on Next.js should be only like for aggregating some data but not for some complex logic which we should done on backend. And of course, if we use Next.js, if we use some JavaScript stack, we can go with NestJS because we can have the same language on both environments, and it makes for developers a bit easier to switch between backend and frontend because, as we know, okay. Okay, so yeah. Going back to talk about NestJS and PostgreSQL, as I said, it's not the best to move all your backend to Next.js because we have seen some cases of the projects when it was done, and it wasn't the best case, even like with the simple options that, for example, we can't scale it easily, our backend services, when we need it. So it's like just simple rule. If we have some heavy processing tasks, we should done it on backend. And Next.js server should be as a backend for frontend, for some data mapping, optimizing it, how to make it easier to use it on frontend. So we can scale backend services separately without affecting our frontend performance. And yeah, NestJS handles big data, background jobs, and complex business logic efficiently, and much more efficient than our Next.js. So it's my rule, which I try to use in my work. Keep it simple. There is plenty of complexity, which will be coming later. Yeah, it's I suggest to use it for everyone. So it's me. I'm Viktoriia. I'm working in cybertech, and I wanted to say a few words as well that in the free time I write some aviation blog because I love aviation, and I have right now one of the articles is a review of Khmelnytsky Airport, and I will be really happy if you will read it. Because right now the situation in Ukrainian airports is not the best, and we are trying to improve it. So, and recently we agreed that we will be as official representative of the Association of Civil Aviation Airports of Ukraine. It's something similar to ACI Europe, if you have heard about it. So I guess that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
We have some time for questions. Anybody? Okay, think about, okay, go.
In terms of connectors from JavaScript to Postgres, are there any differences? You definitely should avoid one of the connector, or it doesn't matter which connector you pick up from NodeJS? I'm talking about the driver, like MPG, or I don't know what the name of.
I haven't got your question fully. Like, you mean which some ORMs?
There are some libraries that you need to include in your JavaScript to connect to Postgres.
Yeah.
Whether there are some of them that are recommended or not. For instance, if you use Python, you use PsychoPG.
Yeah.
In Node.js, which one do you use?
So actually, in Node.js, we use PG. It's like, in Node.js, it's actually the best is to use is what you use on backend, because Next.js allows us to have a server, and if we use PG and PM module on the server in NestJS, we can use it as well in Next.js on the front-end side, actually in full stack framework. So it really depends on what you need. Of course, you can connect not only Postgres, you can connect whatever you want, but it's like the best is to use the most popular modules, which everyone uses in most of cases. So right now, it's PG, the most popular one, which you can use for connection. Of course, you can use as well some ORMs if you prefer it, but yeah, it depends really what you need.
Anyone? Okay, I have a question. So, yeah, I see that we have like React and JavaScript
Yeah.
everywhere in our like front end, right? Web.
It happens. Yes.
How do you think? I mean, what are the reasons that backend, like especially Node.js, is so famous right now to develop the backends? Like we have Go, we have C, we have Java. Why do you think the Node.js is like one of the best choices right now?
I guess it's a bit obvious question because JavaScript is a bit easier to understand and to maybe like not to understand but to learn and to write everything what you want. Hopefully we have right now TypeScript, so it's at least a bit typed. And yes, well, a lot of courses which we have right now which push to learn JavaScript. So it's why Node.js became, I guess, really popular. At least it's one of the reasons. Yes.
Hello, I have a question about the way you use Postgres inside so this kind of application. Do you have tips or ideas to share about some special things to know when using Postgres? Basically, is there some special way, some stuff to be careful?
Mm-hmm. Regarding Postgres, there is like not anything like special what you should do like in Next.js or NestJS. So obviously you should follow like basic rules like caching, indexing, how your database should look like. So nothing special. Maybe not like, to use ORM fully, because sometimes ORM can generate really weird queries, which under the hood works really bad. But in general, yeah, I guess you should just follow the basic rules. Welcome.
I'm not really using Node.js or anything. I'm more a Python person, but
good for you.
but
Okay.
it looks like Next.js is like mainly used by front-end developers. Yes. Is it a good use case for like to introduce full stack in a company, or should Next.js still be used only by front-end, or maybe like split the work between backend and front end? Like, how would you recommend to like distribute your workforce to use Next.js?
Okay, so as I say, definitely Next.js shouldn't be used as server. You should definitely have some separate server which will do this whole security job, handling of the data, all the stuff. But yeah, on Next.js we can do some server stuff. For example, on Next.js, we can trigger some payments after we, for example, trigger Stripe, and from Next.js, we can monitor the status of this payment directly in our database. So we don't need to do all these API calls to our server. We just query our database directly from Next.js. And it actually is done on server side of Next.js. But on our backend side, we process this payment. So it's our separate backend where we process the payment. And after, for example, when it's processed, we do some business logic. We write the status of this payment in our database. And in the same time, our Next.js server query the database and as well gets the status. So I guess it's like the best description of how we can use it. And yeah, it's the best, I guess. So not as main server, definitely not.
Okay, can you please beg for the code of the client and the
this one?
Yeah, the pool. So, so is it like a common situation in JavaScript or Node.js to use pool instead of like direct connections? I mean, do you have like many parallelization in your code usually?
It's a good question. Usually we use just pool, yes.
Okay, never just a single connection, just have a pool and everything is like controlled by this library.
Yeah, usually yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, thank you for your talk.
Thank you. This is a module PG. So we have a package manager, and it's called npm, and we can install these modules like this. Yeah. Thank you.